So, Hillary Clinton graciously conceded defeat in 2016. That is the version that this letter to the editor of my local newspaper said. Here's what he wrote. Hillary Clinton congratulated Donald Trump on his win in the middle of the night after Election Day on November 8, 2016. She formally conceded before noon on November 9. That was a show of grace and patriotism, putting country before self, even when she knew that she would win the popular vote despite losing the Electoral College. I don't expect anything approaching grace, patriotism, or class from President Trump. End of quote. Are you serious? The same woman who weeks before the election gave Joe Biden the following advice?
Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances because I think this is going to drag out, and eventually I do believe he will win if we don't give an inch and if we are as focused and relentless as the other side is.
They cannot be serious. Hillary has spent the last 4 years telling us that President Donald Trump is illegitimate.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president who got illegitimate foreign help. He knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows that there were a bunch of different reasons why the election turned out the way it did. You can run the best campaign. You can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you. I know that he knows that this wasn't on the level.
Why do you think the president is going to such great lengths to essentially prove that he beat you?
Because he knows he didn't. He knows he's an illegitimate president. I do think that he knows that he's an illegitimate president.
Madam Secretary, elaborate it.
He knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows that there were a bunch of different reasons why the election turned out the way it did. And I take responsibility for those parts of it that I should. But Jane, it was like applying for a job and getting 66 million letters of recommendation and losing to a corrupt human tornado. And so I know that he knows that this wasn't on the level. I don't know that we'll ever know everything that happened, but clearly we know a lot and are learning more every day, and history will probably sort it all out.
I mean, this illegitimate stuff has been a 4-year effort by the so-called resistance.
Do you think Donald Trump's win was legitimate?
Take
So is the election legit?
The election was tainted by this intrusion.
I don't see the president-elect as a legitimate president.
You do not consider him a legitimate president.
Does he think that Democrats should put this away, this whole idea of legitimate, illegitimate?
The president's not going to get in the middle of this right now.
I get it, but you didn't answer the question. Yeah. Is Donald Trump legitimate?
I think there's a cloud of questions around what happened and his ties to Russia.
There could be clouds of questions, and we disagree on things, but honestly, I mean, yes or no, is he the legitimately elected president of the United States when he raises his hand?
We're counting on our law enforcement community to get to the bottom of these questions. He also won't.
Do you agree with John Lewis? Do you agree that Donald Trump is, in effect, not a legitimate president?
I think that there's no question that the process that elected him was not legitimate.
Do you agree with John Lewis on what point?
That the president-elect, although legally elected, is not legitimate for all the reasons.
Okay.
I believe, Congressman, that Donald Trump will be a legitimate president.
The legitimacy questions come up.
You say he will be president of the United States, but you're at least reluctant to say he will be the legitimate president of the United States. Is that right?
Figuratively, he is going to be president.
But isn't it more difficult now to work together when you've said flatly he's not even a legitimate president? I don't recognize his legitimacy. John Lewis said that.
John Lewis said that.
You believe he's a legitimate president?
Well, he was elected.
On the fact that Donald Trump can't stand hearing that somehow he's not a legitimate president,
and
that he won fewer votes than Hillary Clinton.
Can't bear to tell him the truth.
And now the delegitimization of the presidency is taking hold within the country.
Do you think it was a legitimate election? I think that there are lots of questions about its legitimacy.
The 2016 election wasn't legitimate. What does it mean to say it's not legitimate? It's not a legitimate election? What, you think it was a legitimate election? The time here, Donna, my question to you is, was it a legitimate election? Does it count?
My personal view is that it was not a legitimate election.
So it doesn't count?
I mean, this started from the very beginning.
And when your son looks at you and says, Mama, look, you won,
bullies don't win. And I said, baby, they don't. Because we're going to go in there, we're going to impeach the motherfucker.
The American people have put up with this president long enough. What more do we need to see? What more lies do we need to hear? It is time for us to say, even though there are those who don't want us to say it, Mr. President, you need to be impeached.
I mean, is there any doubt that if the shoe were on the other foot, if Biden were leading the night of the election in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, only to wake up and find out he's no longer leading?
Now, key battlegrounds are still up in the air, and these include the 3 states known as the Rust Belt: Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
As the race came down to the wire, the U.S. president made an eagerly awaited appearance at the White House. It soon became apparent he wasn't in the mood to celebrate.
The results tonight have been phenomenal, and we are getting ready. I mean, literally, we were just all set to get outside and just celebrate something that was so beautiful, so good, such a vote, such a success.
And Trump ends up losing all 3, and you wouldn't ask any questions. What phonies? Remember Stacey Abrams? She still claims she won the gubernatorial race in Georgia, even though there's no evidence that voter fraud, irregularity, outright thievery cost her the election. She still says it was stolen from her.
I acknowledge that former Secretary of State Brian Kemp will be certified as the victor in the 2018 gubernatorial election. But to watch an elected official who claims to represent the people in this state baldly pin his hopes for election on the suppression of the people's democratic right to vote has been truly appalling. So let's be clear. This is not a speech of concession. Because concession means to acknowledge an action is right, true, or proper. As a woman of conscience and faith, I cannot concede that. But my assessment is the law currently allows no further viable remedy. In the coming days, we will be filing a major federal lawsuit against the state of Georgia for the gross mismanagement of this election and to protect future elections from unconstitutional actions.
But according to PolitiFact, her claim that the election was stolen cannot be substantiated. A professor of election law said, quote, "The only really honest answer is that no one knows for sure how much voting was depressed by the alleged acts of voter suppression. By blaming voter suppression for Abrams' loss, Democrats ignore other factors in her uphill battle. Her messages appeal to minorities and infrequent voters, but Mr. Kemp, her opponent, won more conservative parts of the state." End of quote. But when it comes to President Trump being concerned about the same thing, raising issues about voter fraud and voter irregularity, out comes the Nazi card.
And then I've been telling people for a long time now, I'm beginning to see what happened in Germany back in the 1930s. I never thought that could happen in this country. How do you elect a person president, then all of a sudden give him the authority to be dictator? That's what we're teetering on here. That's what Hitler did in Germany. He was elected chancellor, and then because he successfully discredited the news media, took over the churches. I cannot see that happening here. It may happen, but if it did, that means that the American people are much more, less, I should say, intelligent than I think they are.
Welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Christiana Manpour in London. This week, 82 years ago, Kristallnacht happened. It was the Nazis' warning shot across the bow of our human civilization that led to genocide against a whole identity, and in that tower of burning books, it led to an attack on fact, knowledge, history, and truth. After 4 years of a modern-day assault on those same values by Donald Trump, the Biden-Harris team pledges a return to norms, including the truth.
And when the Nazi card comes out, the race card is never far behind.
I think that he is doing some really reckless, dangerous kinds of behaviors by delaying this and stoking these divisions. But at the same time, I think that Trump is ultimately a symptom of what's been going on in the country for centuries. Right? Racism and anti-Black racism are basically the United States' original sin.
And now a new charge. Because President Trump has not conceded, the Biden team is claiming that they're trying to frustrate the Biden agenda.
And if he can sabotage the next administration, he will do it. If he can retaliate against his enemies, he will do it. If he can stay in office and essentially vacate the election, he will do it.
So just to be clear, Trump isn't just off in a corner blowing off steam. No. His refusal to accept reality is going to affect Joe Biden's ability to govern effectively from day one. And with all the that America is going through right now, Joe Biden needs every day that he can get.
Really? You mean the outgoing Obama administration did not try to frustrate the incoming Trump administration? This is from the New York Times in 2016. President Obama sat by President-elect Donald J. Trump's side, declared that the number one priority in his last days would be ensuring a smooth transition of power. What Mr. Obama did not say was that he also intended to set up as many policy and ideological roadblocks as possible before Mr. Trump took office. Obama is using every power at his disposal to cement his legacy and establish his priorities as the law of the land. Every step the current president takes requires Mr. Trump to overcome one more legislative or procedural hurdle as he seeks to change direction in Washington. Mr. Obama is continuing to fill the ranks of the government with his own appointees. Since Election Day, he has named 103 people to senior civil service jobs, boards, key commissions. End of quote. Now, this next excerpt is from an NPR interview of a reporter who talks about this Washington term of burrowing in. And that means when the outgoing administration leaves, they want to make sure they put as many people and policies in place so that the incoming administration can't undo the agenda of the outgoing administration. Again, it's called burrowing in. And guess who also did it? Obama.
There's a process that's technically known in Washington jargon as burrowing in, when you have political appointees shift over into civil service roles, where people who would sort of ordinarily leave with an administration then are now sort of permanently part of the federal government. And we are beginning to see this take place in potentially some very worrisome positions.
But when Trump does the same thing, well, he's a fascist. He's a Nazi. Now, the media, after the presumptive victory of Joe Biden, celebrated. They couldn't contain themselves.
Character matters. It matters. Telling the truth matters. Being a good person matters.
I don't know why I'm crying so much, but what got me choked up was the picture of the cab driver.
And so I'm very emotional. So when you ask me how I'm feeling right now, I'm sorry. That's all I can tell you. This is how I feel right now.
Nobody knows what it feels like as a black man to be able to speak in this moment.
If you're an immigrant, you don't have to worry if the president's going to be happier to have babies snatched away or send dreamers back for no reason.
Me too. I started crying again when I heard the bell from Paris. I keep crying. I'm going to cry now. Go away from me.
You're going to make me cry.
We don't care who you are. We don't care if you voted for us or not.
This is vindication for a lot of people who have really suffered.
Are you crying?
No.
Are you crying? Are you crying? There's no crying. There's no crying in baseball.
But remember, Democrats, okay, you may have won the White House, but you did not get control of the Senate as you were predicted to do. And the experts predicted that the Democrats would pick up between 10 to 15 seats in the House. And as we speak right now, you are down 12 seats with about a half a dozen left to go. So let's just keep everything in perspective. Donald Trump may have lost, but Trump's agenda did not. Finally, this singer-songwriter captures, I think, how much of America feels about how this election has gone.
When I went to sleep, Trump had the lead.
myself when I turn on the morning news, 'cause they found ballots full of ballots at 3 a.m. all the way from Georgia to Michigan. They took the caps off of their Sharpies and they filled them in. All those pallets full of ballots, all for Joe Biden. Well, isn't that sweet? He got just what he needs. They found just enough folks to get Sleepy Joe the lead. He said, come on, man, I hope you'll be here, sport. Donald Trump said, that shit, I'll see your ass in court. Bring those pallets full of ballots you found at 3 a.m. all the way from Georgia to Michigan. They called Arizona early, and the only way to win is the pallets full of ballots, all for Joe Biden. Somebody better wake him up, so that Joe has Superman. To tell the truth, I think he forgot he was running for president. But it doesn't matter, 'cause they found pallets full of ballots at 3 a.m.
No matter what happens, it's going to be an interesting next 4 years. I'm Larry Elder, and we've got a country to save. I'll see you next time.